I, Enoch, saw the heavens open and the lights descend that were neither of the sun nor the moon. The children of the stars arrived when the earth still knew nothing of fear. They brought with them secrets from other worlds and stirred the ambition of humankind. From their bond with us, the giants came into being, and in my visions, I beheld the rage of the waters falling upon creation. From a world you can only dream of, I will share the extraordinary life I witnessed. Long before the Great Flood covered the earth, humans lived in peace in simple villages beneath the shade of ancient trees and endless skies. Yet it did not take long for the balance between heaven and earth to break. From the heavens came unknown beings to guide humankind, though without direct interference. But captivated by the beauty of human women, they abandoned their original purpose and gave birth to the giants. In those days, I, Enoch, was already an old man. My life unfolded in deep reflection. That morning I sat upon a great rock in the valley, gazing at the horizon. The earth was in pain. Something had shattered, and I felt it clearly within my chest. My son, Methuselah, trusted my intuition and understood well my silences. I sensed his concern growing as the air grew heavy. Although my heart foresaw the danger, I chose not to alarm the villagers yet. I only asked Methuselah to share with any willing ear the importance of staying united and watchful. The world in those times still carried the purity of its very first breath. Creatures had not yet learned to fear mankind, and the waters of the river answered gently to prayers. Nama was a young woman whose courage was admired by all. Her voice was as steady as the eastern wind, and they said that when she touched the water, whirlpools would grow calm. She warned us that the river water had grown murky. I felt her unease, for it echoed my own. The earth was showing its sorrow in many ways. Some neighbors claimed they had sensed faint tremors, as if the earth were stirring restlessly from a long slumber. Yet I knew this was not just a gentle awakening. I had barely stepped into my hut when a sudden roar shook the ground. The earth quivered beneath my feet, and my heart began to race. Though it lasted only moments, it was enough to frighten the entire village. Amid the confusion appeared Noah, a child of my own blood. The boy sought comfort, shaken by the tremor we had just endured. I calmed him, telling him it might simply be a sign that the earth needed care. Deep inside, however, I knew this was only the beginning. Not long after, the initial fear gave way to relief. No visible damage had struck the huts. Still, the unease on the faces of those who knew me had only deepened. I felt with certainty that this tremor was a herald of something unsettling. Though I could not name it, something within me cried out that life would never again be the same. Far from my village rose the peak of Mount Hermon, a high land unreachable by humankind. There dwelled those who had descended from the heavens in days long forgotten by men. Those who had glimpsed them swore they had pale, smooth skin, with bodies that carried both strength and grace. Their faces resembled those of men, yet something about them was different, a strange beauty that seemed to come from another world. Among those who descended from the heavens were Semeiaza and Azazel, who, from above, watched the steps of humankind. Semeiaza had confessed to Azazel that human women stirred in him a strange longing. Though they were not of his world, they carried a light that drew his very soul. Azazel felt uneasy at his words, yet curiosity also stirred within him. He knew they had to remain cautious, for humans were still primitive beings, and their duty was only to watch over them. But Semeiaza had grown weary of silently observing through eternity. He had witnessed much of human suffering and wondered if they should not intervene to ease their burdens. Azazel pondered the idea of sharing transformative knowledge with humanity, though he understood it was not knowledge alone that made them worthy, but what they chose to do with it. Both of them knew that by taking such a step, they would cross boundaries never before touched. They themselves would be changed forever, and the world of humans would change with them. A silent pact began to form, marking the breaking of the established order. The laws they followed forbade any direct interference. To act would mean shattering the delicate fabric of balance. At that moment, a faint tremor passed through the ground, like an ancient sigh, as though the world itself remembered that a forgotten law was about to be broken. Azazel sensed clearly that the earth was trying to warn them. Semeiaza, however, took the tremor as a sign that perhaps the human world was ready for what was coming. Both remained waiting in silence, as if time itself had frozen. In that instant, something unseen had already begun to take shape. In the days that followed, the village tried to return to its usual calm. While the women cared for their children, the men led their herds to graze in quiet meadows. Yet, beneath that surface of peace, worry lingered in the air, unspoken but deeply felt. Everyone searched my eyes for a reassurance I did not have. Nama's gaze, once filled with joy, now carried a faint shadow of unease. She told me that several neighbors had noticed game growing scarce, and that birds seemed to avoid the river. She wondered aloud if perhaps they were fleeing from something. I, thoughtful, answered that nature was wise and was trying to tell us something, that we needed to stay alert. As the days passed, I began to lose my peace at night. Vague visions surrounded me. Tall, silent figures watching me from a place I could not name. One evening, seeking clarity and solitude, I walked toward the edge of the village. Just as I set out, something stopped me. There in the path between the trees stood a creature I had never seen before. At once, I felt the encounter was no accident. The being seemed to have been waiting for me. I spoke to it softly, asking where it came from and why it was there. Following its gaze with curiosity, I lifted my eyes and felt my heart quicken. On a high rock in the distance, bathed in the last light of day, stood a tall and imposing figure. Its posture was upright and noble, radiating a calm beyond the reach of mankind. It watched me motionless as stone. Despite the distance, I could clearly perceive its strange, unearthly beauty. A chill ran down my body. Could it be one of those beings the old story spoke of? I whispered to myself, with certainty in my bones, that something vast and unknown would soon descend from those ancient mountains. I knew then the village would go on, but it would never again be as it once was. I felt an invisible force beginning to guide me. That encounter marked the beginning of my spiritual awakening. Everything had been foretold. The Watchers knew well that the path they had chosen would transform our world and all who lived in it. The sky grew heavy with dark clouds, as if a higher power sought to warn them not to continue with their plans. With resolute eyes, they descended the slopes of Mount Hermon. Fully aware they were crossing a boundary from which there was no return. What they were about to do broke their own laws and would forever disturb the balance that had existed since creation itself. They had resolved to live among humankind. Sameaza calmly regarded the luminous spheres floating silently above them. He tasked them with watching our world closely, marking safe paths, hidden shelters, and dangers yet unseen. He then remembered his own homeland and spoke with longing of the crystal waters of Ashtara, glowing under the 3 moons at night. Azazel agreed, but remarked that our world was different. Here the creatures suffered, unable to move forward into the harmony that El Elior had bestowed upon his dwelling. Sameaza, nodding softly, recalled that El Elior had entrusted them with guarding young and fragile worlds, not through force, but by silently watching over their growth. It was then that one of the luminous spheres detected an anomaly. A human whose essence did not align with the rest. Something in that spirit defied the natural order of creation. Intrigued, Azazel asked what kind of human could possibly draw the attention of Oralim. Meanwhile, Semayaza and Azazel moved steadily among the trees. Guided by the gentle light of the moon, they felt the forest itself watching them in awe, as though this corner of the world had never witnessed such presences before. In that moment, Semayaza's gaze fixed on a human figure walking slowly toward the outskirts of the village. What struck him was the firmness of her step and the rare serenity that surrounded her. Then he understood. Within her burned the hidden flame that Elelior had placed in human essence when the earth was young and still without a name. An irresistible pull stirred within him. Semayaza knew that approaching this human meant breaking an ancient law, yet he could not stop himself. Naama felt a shiver as she glimpsed the silhouettes of the Watchers. Something inside warned her they were not of this earth. Were they wandering spirits? Or perhaps those ancient dwellers of the heights spoken of in legend? Her heartbeat quickened, and she asked directly about their origin, aware that their presence disturbed the very air around them. Semayaza remained silent, returning her question with an inscrutable gaze. The rupture was complete. They would no longer watch from afar, for they had descended fully to walk the paths of humankind. The sun, one among the countless lights scattered across creation, bore witness to something unseen since the earliest days. As it rose, its golden rays brushed gently against the rooftops of our village. Word spread swiftly. No one could remember ever seeing anything like it. Though those beings carried a beauty beyond human measure, they also bore a mystery that no one could name. The Watchers believed that I, an old man among them, carried a soul both awakened and rare. Perhaps, if the heavens allowed, I might open the path between the earthly and the eternal. Semayaza appeared before me with the Azazel at his side, telling me they had come from distant lands to share unknown knowledge with us. Calmly, I asked about their origin, intrigued by the kind of realm that could forge such creatures. Semayaza then spoke of his home, a kingdom called Ashtara, lying beneath endless skies and among stars kindled by Elelior. For ages, they had watched our world, keeping silent and apart. His words left me stunned. I had never heard of stars, or of worlds separated by unfathomable abysses. My mind could not grasp the magnitude of what he revealed, and lifting my eyes to the sky, I searched in vain for answers. Amid the gathered crowd, Azazel noticed a quiet, composed young woman whose modest beauty stood out with clarity. Her name was Sapphira, and her eyes could perceive what was hidden from others. When her name was spoken in the presence of the visitors, Sapphira felt heat rush to her face. Yet she held Azazel's gaze firmly, drawn by the commanding presence of the being before her. As their eyes remained locked, the world around Sapphira seemed to slowly fade away. Strange visions swept through her mind, endless skies filled with lights, landscapes painted in colors she had never known, colossal structures drifting in the vastness, all wrapped in the ache of a distant memory. Methuselah watched with rising unease, feeling his heart pound with a dark cold and anxiety. Though he too was curious about Semeiaza and Azazel, he sensed that the union of two such different peoples would bring far more sorrow than blessing. I, Enoch, had left behind my first warnings, now convinced that these beings would bring my people bright and plentiful days. Yet the union between those who descended from the heavens and the children of men had broken the ancient laws of El Elior. From the act sprang a seed whose fruit remained unknown. Awed by their splendor and wisdom, few noticed that a door had been opened to something that should never have existed. Time kept moving among the children of the earth. The visitors, once looked at with wonder, had become a part of the everyday scenery. Life began to shift slowly through the teachings of Semeiaza and Azazel, though each guided us in very different ways. Semeiaza revealed knowledge meant to enrich our lives, always careful not to disturb the balance of the world. One clear night by the river, he showed Methuselah and me how to read the stars, explaining their movements and how to measure time and seasons. He taught us that every light in the sky followed a path drawn by El Elior, and by understanding those paths, our people would sow better, eat better, and live better. Methuselah, amazed by these lessons, voiced his concern that in gaining such wisdom, we might lose the humility that kept us grounded on earth. But Semeiaza, calm and steady, promised that his intent was to bring us balance and prosperity, never to change our nature or to bring any suffering. Azazel, meanwhile, began teaching chosen men the art of forging metal weapons, showing them how to master fire to craft spears, swords, and other tools of power. He claimed these weapons would secure our strength and dominion, ensuring that other tribes respected and feared us. In the privacy of her home, Sapphira tried to share her concerns with Azazel. She could see clearly what others could not. She sensed that weapons would draw the attention of nearby villages, inevitably leading to conflict and war. Azazel, however, insisted that power brought safety and respect, and that hiding knowledge would only doom us. Sapphira then asked if it was truly possible for a higher being to descend among men without upsetting the balance of their world. That question stirred a shadow of doubt in Azazel. There was deep judgment in her words, revealing an intuition he had not expected from humans. In a quiet corner of the village, Nama and Samayaza spoke softly beneath the starry sky. The teachings of Azazel were already beginning to trouble them both. Samayaza voiced his worry that perhaps it was too soon for men to wield such force. That very night, a light began to descend. It meant the Creator had turned his gaze upon us. Alerted by the villagers, I watched the figure without blinking, my breath caught in my chest. He resembled Samayaza and Azazel, yet something set him apart. A calm strength, an authority that needed no words. His name was Uriel. He warned me clearly that heaven's law had been broken, and that those who had descended from the firmament had crossed forbidden boundaries. He urged me to caution my people about the dark days approaching. Amazed, I asked how he knew my name and from where he had come. Confusion weighed on my heart, for I had sincerely believed that the arrival of these heavenly visitors was a blessing for us. Uriel declared with authority that he was the guardian of the boundaries set by El Elior, and that the knowledge we now possessed had been taken without divine permission. These new lives were growing in the wombs of our women, lives not entirely human, whose arrival would bring difficult days of trial. At that moment, from the shadows, Samayaza and Azazel appeared, walking slowly with cautious eyes. On their faces, I clearly saw a mix of respect and fear. For before them stood Uriel, the Watcher, who acted under the command of El Elior among stars and worlds. Samayaza spoke first, his tone conciliatory yet tense, insisting that his intentions had never been harmful, but rather meant to bring light to the children of men. Uriel watched them with a stern, unyielding gaze. He reminded them that they had broken the supreme law, mingling with earthly beings and creating something that should never have existed. He declared that their actions had placed the orders set by El Elior in grave danger. Azazel answered with conviction, claiming they had given knowledge so that humanity would no longer wander blindly, but could instead seize its own destiny. Yet Uriel replied that they had crossed a boundary El Elior had drawn with wisdom. Knowledge granted without the proper maturity was poison disguised as a blessing. The day would come when those very gifts would turn against us, and against them as well. Much had changed since the Watchers descended upon Mount Hermon. Our village had grown accustomed to the presence of those children of the stars, seeing them as teachers and protectors. Still, no one had imagined the true scope of the union between both worlds. From the bond of Semeiaza and Nama were born the twins, Damal and Aran. Meanwhile, Azazel and Saphira conceived a son they named Nimruth. Tall as trees, the three stood out unmistakably among us. Their appearance stirred admiration, but also something unsettling, a silent shiver in anyone who gazed at them too long. Their height defied the laws of the world, and their arms held the strength to rip stones from the earth. Yet wisdom did not dwell within them. They only sensed dimly that their power was extraordinary, never realizing it would make them more feared than loved. One day, Nimruth sought to display his strength before the children of the village. It was not just a house that fell in that display. It was also the illusion of control. In that instant, every eye opened wide and fear struck deep, as all understood that we lived beside beings who could destroy us. Methuselah, his eyes heavy with suspicion, warned everyone about the unnatural nature of what was happening. He said that ever since the sons of heaven had arrived, we had ignored the obvious signs. Their children possessed a strength completely beyond our control. I tried to reassure my neighbors, explaining that there was no evil in the hearts of these giants, only a power they did not yet understand. One they still had to learn to master. Despite my words, I could not silence the growing unease within my own spirit. I chose to withdraw into the nearby forest, seeking the clarity and peace I only ever found among those ancient silent trees. In that secluded corner of the woods, surrounded by tall and steadfast trunks, I closed my eyes and let the whispers of nature wash over me, as though the earth itself were trying to soothe my restless soul. With every breath, I felt the physical world fade away around me. Something inside me crossed the boundaries of time, touching a reality that no words could fully describe. Suddenly, I was struck by a violent, overwhelming vision. Before my eyes stretched a raging ocean, its waters advancing relentlessly over the land. My heart pounded with anguish as I watched a colossal wave rise on the horizon, driving straight toward our village. A cry caught in my throat, and just as the wave was about to crash down upon everything I loved, I opened my eyes. The forest's calm stood in stark contrast to that vision. I sensed it had not been a simple dream, but a clear warning. I quickly began the journey back to the village, knowing I had to warn my people and face the truth revealed to me. An unimaginable storm was drawing near. The earth itself had felt the weight of those days, and what had begun as peace had turned into a constant, nearly unbearable tension. I had believed our village would flourish with the knowledge given by Sameaza and Azazel, but instead of abundance, scarcity arrived. Nimruth, Arhan, and Amal had grown to colossal size. They were clearly unlike any human, and it became harder with each passing day to satisfy their endless hunger. They devoured the fruits of our harvest without pause, draining in a single day the work of many weeks. Our stores dwindled quickly, and soon there was not enough food, even for the children. Methuselah then reminded me of the words of the messenger Uriel, warning that the sons of heaven had brought curse and ruin. A chill ran down my spine. That powerful yet steady voice of Uriel had left a lasting mark on me. In that moment, a sudden vision struck me with force. I clearly saw a vast wooden vessel floating upon dark, raging waters, beneath skies that roared with ancient thunder. Mountains and cities were swallowed by the abyss, and I understood that more than a ship, it was the final echo of a dying world. I confessed then to my son that Uriel's words weighed heavily on my soul. I knew the end was drawing near, though I had not imagined how deep that abyss would be. Yet, I was certain that the worst still waited for its hour. The situation grew even worse when the giants, no longer satisfied with destroying our fields, began to venture into neighboring lands. The people of those villages started blaming us for having brought such monsters. One night, gathered around the central fire, a silent crowd fixed their furious and unsettled eyes on me. The spears they carried frightened me less than their stares, heavy with reproach and accusation. The leader demanded justice, blaming us for the devastation caused by our giants. I tried to calm everyone, explaining that those youths still did not understand the strength they carried, and that only time could teach them balance and restraint. But the crowd erupted in fury and marched toward Azazel's dwelling. where they found him calm beneath the faint glow of the moon, indifferent to the chaos he had unleashed. Sameaza, desperate, pleaded for patience and understanding, begging them not to lose control. Azazel, however, answered with pride and defiance, reminding them of who they truly were, beings who had watched our world long before it first drew breath. At that moment, the clouds began to churn, and the air grew suddenly cold. The sky thickened as if light itself had been suspended. Then I heard the first thunder clearly, a deep lament rising from the bowels of the earth. The storm arrived not like a wave, but like a crushing blow. From my distant corner, I watched with a knot in my chest. I saw how the lightning fell with unnatural slowness, casting a terrifying glow over the faces of men who, consumed by fear, ran aimlessly in every direction. What I witnessed that night filled me with both wonder and dread. I knew then that the bond between humans and the children of the stars had begun to break for good. Days later, under the cold light of a pale moon, Azazel gathered a group of villagers near the forest's edge. His face reflected a dangerous blend of restrained anger and iron resolve as he prepared a strange substance that glimmered faintly in the torchlight. Azazel told the villagers he had seen their suffering and offered them a gift to protect them forever. One of them stared in fascination as he mixed dark soil, sticky resins, and a yellowish powder that gave off the stench of sulfur. He explained that this gift came from the very bowels of the earth, warning that no human force would ever be able to extinguish that fire once it was unleashed upon their enemies. Soon, the formula was used in lamps to light paths and homes. It burned longer than the fire they had known before, though they had not yet seen its true power. For a brief time, the village regained some of its lost confidence, believing itself protected by Azazel's gift. Peace proved short-lived. Weeks later, the giants Nimruth, Arhan, and Damal returned to the neighboring village, ravaging it brutally. This time, the villagers were prepared and met them in battle. During the fierce clash, Nimruth was struck in the leg by a spear and crashed to the ground with roars of pain and shock. Though the giants survived, they came back wounded and humiliated. Nimruth, blinded by rage and wounded pride, demanded vengeance from Azazel, who once again gathered the villagers in the forest clearing, promising to reveal unimaginable wonders if they defended his honor. The villagers, lured by promises of safety and absolute power, secretly prepared dozens of containers filled with that incendiary substance. Without warning, a rain of fiery projectiles fell upon the neighboring village. transforming the place into an uncontrollable storm of fire. Every desperate attempt to extinguish the flames failed. These fires did not obey natural laws, and human suffering itself seemed to feed the blaze. From a distance, Sameaza and I watched the tragedy in absolute silence. The gifts, once given, had become curses, and in that moment, I remembered Uriel's severe warnings. Power without wisdom is the open door to suffering. Azazel, proud and unrepentant, accused humans of having acted according to their own violent and destructive nature. In that moment, I saw clearly that the darkness in his heart knew no limits. I chose then to turn away from that horror and return to the forest, the sacred place where I had received my first visions. There, slowly and with resolve, I lifted my gaze to the sky, wondering how beings so wise had brought such ruin. Perhaps, I thought with dread, Azazel was right. Maybe the true root of the disaster lay within men themselves. With a trembling voice, I pleaded to El-Elior for an answer, desperate to know if this was the inevitable fate of my people. At that instant, the world seemed to pause. I recalled vividly the voice of Uriel, assuring me that El-Elior never ignored what had come to pass. Then, among the stars that Sameaza had taught us to watch, a bright point appeared, its light growing as it descended slowly, with a solemnity that crushed the soul. And Uriel came. His steps were luminous shadows across the earth. His deep eyes seemed to have witnessed the first spark of creation and the last darkness of fallen worlds. He walked straight toward me, declaring with absolute authority that the time had come for El-Elior to restore the lost order. Uriel's words were like cool water on burning ground. I believed that if El-Elior had turned his gaze upon us, there might still be hope for our children. But what followed shattered my spirit completely. Uriel revealed that our people had become corrupted, and that El-Elior had decreed a great flood to cleanse the world. All would perish, even the innocent who had never taken part in these evils. My heart broke at that judgment. I could not understand why all must pay for the sins of a few. But before the flood, it was necessary to erase the existence of those who never should have been born, whose very presence violated the oldest law that upheld the balance of infinite worlds watched from afar. I did not answer. I felt that Uriel was unlike the other visitors from heaven. His presence radiated a sacred purity, as if his words sprang from the primordial light that had given birth to all things. Soon after, Uriel walked to the center of our village. Around him, the villagers stood in reverent silence, gazing at the celestial being who advanced with authority. Uriel warned Semeaza of the gravity of the deeds committed by him and his brother from the heavens. Semeaza crushed, admitted too late the horror caused by his choices. He had come to grasp the magnitude of the damage, and heavy with guilt, confessed that he could not hand over his children to be destroyed. He had helped Nimruth, Aran, and Amal escape, hoping they might one day find redemption. Uriel listened in silence, clearly understanding the pain Semeaza carried, recalling for a brief instant a similar moment that had once unfolded in another distant world. At last, he warned that though El Elior might consider his repentance, his children would not escape divine justice forever. Azazel, on the other hand, spoke with arrogance and defiance, rejecting all authority and accusing humans of being unworthy, destructive creatures. Uriel answered with severity, declaring that human darkness should have manifested without celestial interference. From the heights, gentle flashes of light descended, taking form before our eyes and revealing themselves as the Oralim, celestial guardians tasked with tracking and watching over all life across the worlds. Uriel commanded them to find the sons of Azazel and Semeaza, assuring that no earthly force could keep them hidden. At last, Uriel proclaimed with unyielding authority that Azazel too would not escape divine judgment. His hour was already written, and his punishment would not delay. From my distant place, I felt the weight and gravity of those words. Our world was about to face a judgment that no one could stop. For a long time, Uriel walked among men with a mission clear and unbreakable. He had to find the children of the Watchers. The Oralim, gifted with the wisdom of Ashtara, swept across the skies in search of the giants. Their movements were like luminous brushstrokes, reminding us that every choice carries the power to create beauty or unleash chaos. They crossed untamed landscapes carved by the Creator, places never touched by human hands, where nature spoke with a voice of its own. Amid those endless lands, Damal and Aran wandered aimlessly, consumed by the exhaustion of a long flight. Semeaza had warned them before they had departed that Uriel would never rest until he found them. As the days passed, their strength faded until they could resist no longer. Even the strongest spirit breaks when hope is gone and the heart finds no rest. Uriel sensed the signal of an Oralim and rose gently into the heights, moving in silence until he reached the giant's location at dawn. Damal and Aran, aware of the power of the being approaching, accepted their fate with resignation. From the thickness of the forest, Nimrod watched them with cold resolve. Feeling he still had a chance, he turned and ran toward the coast, leaving his cousins behind without a glance. Clumsy and heavy though he was, inside him burned a stubborn light that clung desperately to life. With a voice like thunder, Uriel declared to Damel and Arhan that their very existence defied the eternal law and would not be tolerated under the Creator's gaze. Without further warning, he lifted his eyes to the firmament. A supernatural storm began to form over the giants, darkening the sky and filling the air with raw energy. Relentless lightning struck the twins, their massive forms glowing with each violent surge. Their cries of agony echoed across the valley as their bodies slowly dissolved. After one final, blinding flash, only blue smoke and drifting ash remained. Far away, Nimrod had reached the coast and shoved desperately at a wooden boat. Built in secret over many months in anticipation of this tragic end, with one last look at the horizon, he climbed aboard and set sail southward, vanishing into the ocean mists. In our village, I sat by the river in meditation. My aging body bore the weight of my worries, and my spirit was weary from all the strife and loss I had witnessed. Uriel then came to me, calmly revealing that the fate of the giants was sealed. Damal and Arhan would never again sow ruin or pain upon the earth, and Nimrod had departed toward barren lands where no strength could endure. I also learned that Semyaza would return with him to Ashtara, while Azazel would face the harvest of all he had sown. I asked how he managed the balance among so many worlds and stars, and he explained that to El-Elior, immensity was nothing more than himself, present in all things, able to sustain every balance. The sky had turned leaden, heavy with a storm that throbbed within the clouds. On the peak of a desolate mountain, Azazel waited with arrogance for the inevitable arrival of Uriel. Soon, amid lightning tearing the heavens with fury, the sphere descended from above. Uriel had enforced order among the watchers in many worlds, yet never had he faced such a great heresy, giving carnal form to forbidden beings, half star, half clay. Azazel, steeped in sarcasm and defiance, greeted Uriel with arrogant words, declaring that nothing could change what had been done or erase the marks left engraved in the hearts of men. The eyes of Uriel reflected both disappointment and resolve, shaped by his training in the temples of Ashtara, where the natural balance of the worlds was held in reverence. Uriel spoke sternly of the suffering Azazel had caused, reminding him of the noble purpose bestowed by El Elyor, one that demanded humility and vigilance. Azazel tried to justify himself, claiming that humans needed his guidance, insisting he had only revealed their true malicious spirit. But Uriel reminded him that only El Elyor was the true creator, and that their task had always been only to watch. Azazel moved forward to show his strength, but suddenly he was frozen in place, unable to move even an arm. Confusion and fear spread across his face. Uriel, steady and solemn, declared that his mission was to restore the broken balance, and that Azazel had become a danger to everything born under the Creator's gaze. When Uriel lifted his eyes to the sky, the clouds answered with a violent storm of blinding lightning. Azazel's body remained immobile, trapped by an invisible force that stripped him of will. The fury in his eyes gave way to desperation. From the clouds descended radiant beams of pure energy, wrapping Azazel in chains of solid light. Each one was an unbreakable bond, tied to divine judgment. Azazel struggled in vain as he was slowly pulled into the rocky ground, sinking inexorably, prisoner to those celestial bindings. And silence reigned. The wind eased. Little by little, the clouds began to scatter, and the faint light of the sun filtered once more across the mountain's peak, now transformed into an eternal prison. Uriel stood still for a moment, gazing at the rocky tomb he himself had sealed. A trace of melancholy crossed his face, fully aware of the painful duty he had just fulfilled. Since Azazel's entombment beneath the mountains, it seemed even nature held its breath, waiting for what was to come. By the river, I waited patiently, aware that the end of my path was near. My weary eyes carried the serenity that comes with understanding, after having witnessed truths capable of breaking even the strongest hearts. Uriel then appeared with his usual solemnity and calm, telling me that El Elyor had watched every step I had taken, and that the time had come for me to leave this world. At first I resisted the thought of leaving my people behind, for I longed to face whatever disaster might come alongside them. I could not understand why humans were not granted the chance to mend their mistakes. Uriel, with compassionate firmness, explained that to bestow power before its time leads inevitably to desolation, diverting the path the Creator had set. The human soul had been irreparably tainted. When I asked what fate awaited me among the celestial beings, Uriel assured me I would see things no human eye had ever beheld, reaching truths touched only by them. He assured me that my legacy would endure through my bloodline, especially within the family of Noah, who would be chosen to survive the flood. An ark would be built in secret, and when El Elyon opened the heavens, Noah's family would sail toward a new dawn. His words pierced my spirit, stirring silent tears of sorrow for what I was leaving behind, and hope for what was yet to come. I accepted my fate with humility, ready to discover the wonders the heavens would reveal to me. Not far away, on a small hill overlooking the valley, Semeaza gazed at the moonlit landscape. Beside him, Nama carried the heavy sorrow of farewell. Semeaza acknowledged the damage caused by his presence, and aware that he must face the consequences, said goodbye with gentleness and melancholy. He promised to carry forever in his dreams the memory of those moments shared beneath the stars. Nama stood still, feeling her soul break as Semeaza slowly vanished into the glowing sphere. She understood then that eternity is an illusion for those who have never loved. Everything of value burns quickly and fades in silence. Meanwhile, Uriel's sphere awaited near the forest. I walked slowly toward it, ascending a ramp that seemed forged of solid light. Watching the village grow smaller beneath me, I felt a profound calm settle over my spirit. I embraced my fate without fear, wondering quietly what new wonders and truths would be unveiled. The sphere that carried me moved through a vast expanse of shadow and brilliance, drawing away from my world until it became nothing more than a small blue point. With my eyes wide in absolute awe, I beheld a panorama no human had ever seen before. First appeared before me colossal columns of fire, immense forms of blazing flame rising from unfathomable depths, twisting upward like living creatures, holding aloft unseen worlds. Far ahead, I beheld stars that seemed to sing, their voices resonating in perfect harmony. Each star pulsed with its own light, coloring the darkness with silver, gold, and deep blue tones. Much later, I witnessed colossal torrents of light, bursting forth with indescribable power, like living beings forged from pure fire. These streams stretched between the luminaries of the heavens. In that moment, I understood that all I had known was nothing more than a spark within an infinite firmament, filled with presences, power, and wonder still unseen. After passing through a region that seemed made of silver winds, I approached a vast world encircled by 3 golden spheres, glowing like a radiant jewel suspended in the void. As I advanced toward that new destiny, I realized I was witnessing the absolute greatness of El Elior's design, and I knew with certainty that my soul would never be the same. Uriel's sphere crossed into the atmosphere of Ashtara, and I gazed upon a realm whose beauty overflowed all understanding. We descended toward a colossal structure, raised atop a shining mountain, where the very stone itself poured forth light. Guided by Uriel, I walked through a gigantic hall, whose walls gleamed like pure crystal. Radiant columns upheld endless ceilings that shimmered with reflections of impossible colors. At the center, upon a pedestal, carved from unknown gems, stood El Elior. His appearance escaped all human language, a being of radiant crystal essence, wrapped in a fire that never faded. When I tried to focus my eyes on his face, the force of the light and flame erased every detail. I could only perceive an infinite energy exhaling life, wisdom, and compassion. I understood that this vision was only a form El Elior allowed to our limited eyes. He was formless and without end, beyond even the reach of the Watchers. Then, his voice resounded deep within me, reminding me that in a corrupted land, I had walked with justice and compassion. He revealed that the day would come when the waters would cleanse the world, and that only the bloodline I had guided would restart the human story. Until that time, I would remain there, learning hidden truths so that my testimony might bring light to the survivors when the appointed hour arrived. Let these words be kept by those who walk after us. Do not give life to what you cannot understand, for it will not know how to love you, but it will surely know how to judge you.